we're back with another dilemma. I'm Emma
And I'm Brian Burns.
Burns, and we are coming back to you after a few weeks of being off. So, how does it feel to be back recording?
It feels good. I'm excited.
There's been
Get
a
back
lot
to it.
that's been happening. Do we want to catch them up or do we want to kick into the episode? I think today we're talking about how to win the moment of sales cycle.
Why don't you catch them up?
Well, yeah, we've been crazy busy. Last week I went to the SHRM conference, which is really cool. And then the week before that, you were on a motorcycle trip, and so we've just been enjoying our summer, but we are excited to be back and recording another episode.
Yes. It's good to be back.
Yes. So, like I said earlier, today we're talking a little bit about how to win the moment of sales. And I think we have two different perspectives, which we always love. I'm coming from a BDR role where I'm not necessarily walking a prospect or a customer through a sales cycle, but I'm in the beginning, and I think I've learned a little bit from you and just other people on what happens on the in between. And I think I'm still involved in the process, even though I'm not directly corresponding with the customer. I'm still doing things that will keep them involved and keep grabbing their attention. So, but you've walked them through the cycle. So we just want to talk about maybe what works for us. And
Yeah, in our different roles.
yeah,
And you could probably apply these things to other roles as well, but just maybe
100%.
tweak it.
Yeah, this really goes, yeah, for any job. I used to work with self-storage facilities, and even in those instances, I mean, if someone says they're interested, that's only the first step. You have to you have
Yeah.
to help walk them through what they're interested in, along with just getting signed up for self-storage. So that's kind of off topic, but we have a few pointers. So do we want to go one by one?
Sure.
Okay. So I will kick it off. I think the first thing I had on my list was preparation. I think this is important with anything, but to know your customer, know the account, to also work with, at least for me, work with my AE or my sales rep to understand how we want to go about keeping the prospect engaged, in our product, in us, in the next steps, etc. So there's a lot of preparation that happens, also just within timeline. It's important to put together a timeline in the very beginning, and that all is formed in the preparation process.
Yeah, I think when you're preparing, you want to know some things about the company that you're calling, right?
Mm-hmm.
The role the person's in that you're talking to, some of the key executives in the company so that you can be familiar with who they are.
Yep.
Maybe some recent news about the company, what they do, what they sell. And I think it's important to know what that person does. So let's say they're a compliance officer. So
Mm-hmm.
they're going to be mostly concerned about how your product might help them stay in compliance, right?
Yeah.
If they're a CFO, how is it going to help my bottom line? If they're in HR, they're probably wanting to know how is this going to affect my people?
Mm-hmm.
And so when you're talking to them or you're sending them information, you're tailoring that to their specific needs as an individual and in their individual role as well.
Yeah. 100%.
And then you want to help, you also want to, I think, find out a little bit about them. Like, can you go on LinkedIn and see where they went to school and what, I was
Yeah.
talking to someone the other day and we just happened to go to the same school, uh, to in Cal State Fullerton. We both worked at ADP for a long time or for a period of time, at the same time and didn't realize it. And so it really started the conversation nicely because it's like, hey, we have a couple things in common. That's how I started it off. And we
Yeah.
were able to, I was able to build rapport pretty quickly that way. And I think that's a good way to, to do some research and understand a little bit about who they are and what they do and how you can get that conversation rolling.
And I think too, just to go over our entire topic, how to win the moment, every single interaction
Interaction.
with the
Yes.
prospect or customer is a moment that you have the opportunity to win, whether it's a simple phone call or email, that will impact your next steps. Um, and so it's not just the sales cycle, it's how you're interacting with them all the way up into the first appointment. So that's really what
All
my
the way
role
through.
is.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, up to the first appointment and then every time after that. But
Yeah.
at least for my role, it's getting them in the door, and then sales is walking them through the process, and I'm kind of contributing with like, hey, can we send you coffee like for your second call or for the demo? Like we would love to I don't know, DoorDash your team lunch or whatever it is. It's just
Yep.
making sure all the interactions are spot on. So, like you said, like if someone is inviting other people to the meeting on the team, like making sure looking up those emails, knowing what roles there are, what roles they are before the meeting,
Yeah.
knowing the industry, that's super important, and how our product benefits their, line of work. So all of that happens in the preparation phase.
Yes. Agreed. And then I think once you move beyond preparing and you're actually on the conversation, that's where it goes to more of what I was talking about, like kicking it off with, hey, we have some things in common. And
Hmm.
that sparks interest, right? Then you start talking about because each, piece of that conversation, every minute of that conversation is
Is
important, right?
valuable.
And if you
100%.
started off with something that's engaging and breaks the ice and builds rapport all at the same time, then then you're already winning, and then you can grow from there.
Yeah, I,
Um,
I think we're all humans, and we all crave like relatability and almost like a comfortability. And
yep,
so when you're unfamiliar with someone, there's a sense of tension, whether or not they say it or not. So
sure,
those icebreakers are so important, just like in, high school or middle school or whatever, when you go to those classes and they're like, okay, icebreakers, go around the room and say something. Well, that's kind of how a meeting is. It's like any chance you have to kind of break the ice and kind of get them warmed up and start to feel that comfortability. Um, it's it really does go a long way with
yeah, absolutely.
with them.
And then I think you've said this before, active listening, right? That's that's what someone once said. That's listening and some. So you're listening, but you're actually listening to what they're saying and why they're saying it, and you're not just waiting for a chance to say what you want to say,
Hmm.
but addressing what they've said. And sometimes it even is good to like write something down that they said, and then later when you're talking, you can address, you can refer to it and go, well, as you mentioned earlier, and you bring it back into the conversation. They go, oh, he was really listening to what I was saying.
Hmm.
You know.
I think this can get lost in the sauce too, quote unquote,
Mhm.
because it is like so important, but a lot of times we have a built out script or we have all these things we studied up on for this account. Like, okay, like
Yeah,
I know this, like we can help them here and here and here. And you start to even, nervous or not, you rely on that scripted message to get through to them that we can help them and create the solution. And a lot of times they just want to feel heard. They don't want to necessarily know exactly the ways you think you can help them. They want to know that their problems are going to be addressed. And so, active listening goes a long way with just understanding, and not only understanding, but almost rebuttaling what they say and then going, so based on this, here's what we can do, or, what have you. And like you said, like it's very important to take notes. On all my calls, I take notes. And when I'm following up with emails, I always mention some of the things they've said in the calls or previous emails, and whether that's passing that on to my AEs, follow up on the first call, mentioning some of those, or in my follow up email when I'm trying to set the call. For example, the other day I had um, a call with this guy, and it's an account that we've been reaching out to for a couple years now. And just so happened to catch him on vacation when he was in Europe. And so he said, "Hey, can you call me in like 2 weeks? I'm currently in Europe on vacation." And so I called him in 2 weeks and I said, and he didn't pick up. So I sent him an email and I said, "Hey, I know I caught you at a bad time in Europe. I actually just got back from there. I hope your trip was amazing. Would love to revisit our conversation." When I gave him a call, he's like, "Oh, you're the one that caught me on, when I was in Europe." And, we got to talking about that a little bit. And it just created this kind of like sense of relatability. Like we both were in Europe. I had caught him at a
Yeah,
time when he was on vacation. I was then on vacation. Um, and just remembering those like little details goes a long way with people. And we booked first
yeah,
call. So,
nice. So a couple of things. When you mention AEs, you're talking about account executives. Those are the
yes.
sales reps that you support
Yep.
and try to book appointments for and get opportunities for. Um, so I think in terms of the other most important thing next to active listening or related to active listening is effective communication, right? So that involves things like if I'm taking notes and maybe I'm on a laptop, maybe I'm writing on in pen, I actually will sometimes say that. Like, hey, do you mind if I take notes? Because
Hmm.
it can be distracting when you're talking to someone and they keep looking down or they're looking at their laptop and they're typing and you're not really sure. Are they taking notes about what we're talking about or are they distracted doing emails? Are they doing something else? It could really be distracting for someone.
Right.
So if you say it and you call it out and you communicate like, hey, I hope you don't mind, I'm taking notes. Like this conversation is important to me and I want to make sure I don't forget some of the things that we talked about. So I'm gonna take some notes throughout, and I type my notes, so I hope that's not too distracting. In fact, sometimes when people are have you ever heard someone typing when you're on a call with them, especially a video call, and they have their microphone is just like the open mic, and you can hear their tapping, and it like picks it up in the mic, and it can be really distracting.
I've never experienced that, but I'm sure
No,
it can be. I used
yeah,
to be in a classroom with kids who would be typing on their computer while the professor was talking, and it was very similar in the sense of like I heard the noise of their computer more than the the
the
message that
professor.
was trying to,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, in this case, because the mic's picking it up, it can like drown out. If there's other participants, it can kind of drown out what they're saying because they're typing so.
Mm-hmm.
So,
And that's when you just click mute participant.
right, exactly. But if you're the one doing it, you want to know. Like, I even asked someone the other day when I was doing that. I said, "Hey, can you hear me typing? I'm taking some notes. Can you hear that?" And they're like, "No, I don't hear anything." So it's good to confirm. My point is, it's good to confirm little things like that, and over communicate and let them know what you're doing because you want them to know you're really engaged.
Well, yeah, and
Um,
I also think that effective communication goes down to like um I I think I've struggled with this in the past, but it's like when your teacher's grading your essay and they remove what they call fluff. And a lot of
oh
times
yeah,
in emails, I can almost like beat around the bush because I want to say it in the nicest way or the most effective way. And sometimes it's better to just say it in the way that makes the most sense. So when you're, providing times or days that are good for a next appointment or that are your idea of a timeline or next steps,
yeah,
literally just writing out next steps and putting those like one, next call or demo, two, like in making it so clear because people don't have time to read an email with a bunch of words that you think is the nicest way of saying it or whatever. They will
right.
probably send it immediately to trash because their day is already booked enough. So, um, effective communication to me just means that you are getting through to the other person what is on your mind in the easiest, most simplest way possible.
Yeah, so I have a couple thoughts on that. One is you hit it on the head. Like if you have a meeting with someone, email an agenda ahead of time. It doesn't have to
Yes.
be like this fancy Word document. It can be three
Or
bullets in an
PowerPoint.
email. Yeah,
Exactly.
it can literally be three bullets in an email. Like, hey, what I had in mind for today's meeting was this, and
Yep.
introductions,
It
share a
allows
little
you to
bit of,
be on the same page. Your personality will come across in the meetings. You don't need to have your voice be heard through an email. Um,
and they know what to expect. They're not caught off guard,
exactly.
right? They know how to prepare for the meeting or not have to prepare for the meeting. Um, and maybe there is some preparation. You let them know that, like, hey, I'm hoping to talk to you about this, so they know to prepare for that.
Yep.
So the other thing I was going to mention is that if you know a little bit about them, you've done your research, you know what your product is, you know how it might help them, you need to tie that together, right? So instead of just coming in and going, hey, I know a little bit about you, or mention a few things about them, and then here's some information about my product, that doesn't connect the dots for them. It's more helpful if you come in and ask them about their business and what challenges they're facing. They say, hey, we're really struggling with these compliance issues. Well, that's kind of why I wanted to talk to you, because our product has this feature that actually addresses compliance issues. And
Right.
this is how. And now you've really drawn them in because they shared with you something about them and you've shared something about you that actually helps what they've been
Right.
struggling with.
Addressing their industry and tying that back to the way that our product is built out for their line of work,
Yeah, for
whether
their
it's
specific
unions
challenges,
or, yeah.
whatever it is, whatever it
Yep.
is they're facing. And another thing that I think is important is that when you can't help somebody, when you're not the right solution, you're not the right fit, come out and say that. Tell them like, hey, I don't
Yeah.
think we're the right fit for you. Or I think we can help you in these ways, but that specific thing is something we usually bring in a partner, or we don't do that. You might want to look at these companies, and people respect that. They really do. It builds
Or,
credibility.
yeah, 100%. And I also think, on top of that, if the customer or prospect isn't giving you the time, or say they've almost put a rush on this process but aren't meeting your timeline,
Hmm.
communicating effectively to them that based on their wants and needs, they need to meet these specific timelines or we will not be able to comply with what they're asking of us. So, making sure that you're on the same page with, I'm going to do my best to understand you if you do your best to work with me in the approach that we've built out in our previous
Right.
call or previous email. Um, yeah, I think that's also super important.
Yeah. I like, for example, if they say, hey, we're going to need this thing implemented by such and such date,
Say by December and it's like November, October, November.
whatever that is, then you need to communicate like these are the milestones we have to meet in order to get that done
Yeah.
in time. Even
And
if they haven't even
that's,
signed with you, you still have to get to that point. And like, we're going to need signed documents by this date, or we won't have time to get you implemented.
yep.
Um, so I think and there's another thing that you can do with somebody, with a customer prospect, is in this process, if they've engaged and decided like they want to work through a process with you, they want to evaluate your solution, you can have what you call a joint action plan, and you basically outline the different steps that need to happen in this process for them to do their evaluation, for them to make a decision, for you to provide them what they need to respond to their RFP, whatever those things are. And you can put commitment dates and who's responsible for those commitments in that action plan, and share it with them. And then it feels more like now we're sitting on the same side of the table and we're working on this project together.
Yeah,
And it's no longer like me selling you.
right. And that's, yeah, that creates the, that allows the customer to trust you because you have,
Transparency.
yeah, you've created that transparency, but also allowed them into your world of what needs to happen on your side for the process to go smoothly, but also on their side, who they need to talk to, who they need to bring into um, the meetings or yeah,
Yeah, and if you
into the
can, I mean, the ideal way to build that is to do it with them. Like, hey, I need a 30-minute call with you or a
yeah.
15-minute call with you to build this action plan. And
Or even at the
um,
end of every meeting going, here's what next steps look like.
yeah,
Are we on the
and you
same
pull
page?
out that action plan, you go through, here's what we've already accomplished. Check, check,
Exactly.
check.
Yeah.
And here's what's next and what's coming. And are you still in agreement with this? Does this look good to you? Is there anything I missed? You know, those kinds of things. It's good.
I think the next one is addressing objections, which kind of goes into that checklist you were just talking about at the end of the meetings. But
Hmm.
I think it's important to ask everyone, say after the first call or after whatever it is, going, um, is everyone on the same page, or
Mm.
is there something we need to address before next meeting or before or on our next meeting? And making sure that everyone is on board with what you're saying. You're hearing each other. It's that communication, but following up on any miscommunication.
Yeah, that's good. It's there's a technique that I learned from Mark Witcher. Do you remember Mark Witcher?
I
I'll
do.
give it I'll give a shout out to Mark Witcher. He was my manager for many, many years at ADP and really great guy. He he would do this thing where when we would meet for a demonstration or a discovery, typically a demonstration, and we had, all the the stakeholders in the room. Typically, it was anywhere from, 4 to 10 people, sometimes even more, depending. But he would stop at the very beginning and say, I just want to go around the room and ask each of you to share with us what you hope to get out of today's meeting. And that question alone will tell you so much about each individual because some of those people, sometimes they bring in people that they want to see the product but aren't necessarily a decision maker, but could have influence, or they might be a decision maker and you didn't know. And they will tell you things like, oh, I'm just here to see this, or I'm not really interested in this, or just things that you're like, okay, that person is an objection. They're the person I need to figure out because they're not on our side. Or you might find somebody that is, hey, I already, you kind of find out a lot from them telling you what they want to get out of the meeting.
Right.
So, and what you do is you write those things down. And at the end of the meeting, you come back and you go, hey, some of you kind of make sure you address them all as you go.
Yeah.
And here's what you guys said. And here you feel good that we covered all that. Or if there's one that you couldn't cover or didn't cover, you can say, hey, we're going to have to get back to you on that one. And they know that, again, you're listening, you're paying attention to their needs, and you can turn those people that maybe weren't really on board over, their body language tells you a lot of stuff too.
Yeah.
But you can kind of turn them over onto your side because you were listening to them and you're paying attention to their needs and what their personal needs are.
I love that. And that kind of goes into our last point, which is follow up. So, kind of at the beginning of the meeting, making sure that, well, you did mention at the end of the meeting going around the room and making sure that the objections were met or anybody's want during the meeting was met.
Yeah,
But a follow up, which is super important, whether it's a checklist of going, hey, here's what we completed in this meeting, this is what we look forward to in next meeting. At the end of every call, at the end of every, um, like I said, meeting, making sure you're emailing them, checking in. I think that all goes into follow up. Even afterwards, you're still doing
yeah,
follow up after you sell them on the deal. So those are
yeah.
your customers now.
Yeah, and if you can follow up with each individual um, individually, I think I'm repeating myself, um, that's even better. Sometimes when you're working on an RFP, you're only allowed to go through a particular person,
Right.
but you should write it as if everybody's reading it because they may pass it along.
Yeah.
Um, so you kind of have to do that, but it is good when you can kind of make those personal connections with individuals and say, shoot them an email and say, Hey, that was a great question you asked today in
Yeah,
the meeting. Hope you got the
exactly.
answer
That
you're looking for.
and that's when you pull in that all those notes you took, everything you were listening to,
Hmm.
and you kind of include that in the follow-up, and that's what creates the it builds a rapport with them.
Yep. Yep. Yeah, and I think those are the all the little moments, right? All those little moments that you have to try to win in a process.
Yep.
There's the big moments, there's the first call, there's the discovery or analysis, and then there's the demo. Those are kind of the
Yeah.
big moments, right? But then all those little ones that we talked about today, every single one of those matters
Yes.
because it can make a difference of, so many times um, a sale can become very competitive. And what you have
Yeah.
to offer is not much different sometimes from the competitor, at least in terms of the needs of that
So
customer.
sometimes it really does come down to how well you know them and how well they know you and how much they trust you.
Yeah.
And
People,
that's what winning every little moment adds up to is winning the big one.
yeah, and you're building trust every single time you in that
Yeah.
moment, right?
Yeah.
And they say the old saying is still valid today. It's been around forever, is that people buy from people they like and they trust. And so that's how you win.
Love it. I think we touched on everything. At least everything I
Everything we
had.
had planned on. Yeah, I
Yeah.
think so. I think this was a good one.
Yeah, thanks for tuning in, guys. We're glad to be back. We're glad to be recording another episode, and we hope everyone's summer is going well. I think to end it off, I'm going to ask you what your favorite summer activity is or
My
what you plan
favorite.
to do this summer. Yeah.
Mm. So something that I did do this summer is I went. The reason why we missed one of our sessions, I went on a motorcycle ride through Arizona, and then to Zion National Park in Utah.
Mm-hmm.
And it's pretty beautiful there. I honestly wish I'd planned to have a little more time there than I did. But the ride and the journey is really what it was all about, and had a great experience on the Harley. And hope to do more riding this summer as well.
Nice. I think mine is I really enjoy camping in summer. My boyfriend Logan, he was recently in a crash, but we've been talking about going camping for weeks now, so it's gonna be postponed for this summer. It'll probably be more of a fall activity for us. But I really enjoy camping. I really enjoy hiking. Um, I just love being outdoors. I like going on drives and watching the sunsets during summer because those are beautiful. So
Mhm.
yeah, there's a lot to look forward to, but I think that wraps up today's episode.
Yeah.
All right, we'll catch you next time. See ya.
Bye.